Hello, everyone. My name is Kate, and I've spent my whole life in a real prison. But as strange as it sounds, it's absolutely not my fault that I was born and immediately sentenced to life imprisonment with practically no chance of release. Do you think that's impossible? It's still possible, and not just somewhere in a parallel universe. So now I will tell you everything from the very beginning. I was born in a prison maternity hospital where babies are almost immediately taken away from their mothers, and they grow up with complete strangers. Wardens who have no hearts, no conscience, and generally nothing to do with people. I don't even know what sins I committed in my past life to deserve such a fate. But I don't think that this seems right. Let me tell you a little story. Our city has always had a high crime rate as it attracts criminal elements from all over the world with different and sometimes aggressive outlooks on life. And of course, they arrange constant fights among themselves. And one day, a man appeared on the horizon who managed to convince the townspeople that he would be able to put an end to the lawlessness and keep things in order. So we had a new mayor, and no one even knew what his methods for combating crime were at the time. Everyone just talked about upcoming changes. No one thought about how he would change things at the time. I wasn't even close to being born, so I didn't get to witness any of this happening. So this mayor turned out to be a very strange person who brought him with many strange innovations. First of all, he ordered the demolition of the only football stadium in the city, along with all the nearby facilities, because it was there that, as a rule, clashes between local groups took place, and then a huge prison was erected in its place. It was divided into two sections, one for children and one for adults. At around the same time, a ban was issued for people with criminal records to have children, and if those children were already born, they were forbidden to have parents, and they were sent to the children's section of the prison. As you can already guess, I was unlucky, and a woman who robbed a bank gave birth to me. No, excuse me, not a bank, but a jar. But more on that. Later, the mayor was very certain and trumpeted about it everywhere. That crime is a disease that is inherited, and the child of a criminal will certainly become a criminal themselves. Violation of the law is transmitted genetically, he said, and people believed him. But somewhere against his approach and under the pressure of activists, the mayor had to reconsider the conditions from now on. It was called the Mutual Assistance Program for the inmates. It came to be called rehabilitation, and for children, it was called treatment for genetic crime cravings. Almost all of the staff in the children's section of the prison consisted of prisoners in the adult section. In an atmosphere of total control, both of them had to observe strict discipline to receive a coveted ticket to freedom. Once a year, the prison administration granted amnesty to only 2 people, and the prisoners were ready to do anything for this. But let's get back to me. All of my memories begin here because I have not spent a minute outside of the prison my whole life, and nobody even bothered to come up with new names for us. We were simply called the same names as our parents, girls by the names of their mothers and boys by the names of their fathers. Hence, my mom's name is also Kate. The first stage for imprisoned children is high security kindergarten. The only thing we were taught there was obedience and bad behavior. We were severely punished. Once during lunch, I choked on breadcrumbs and started coughing. This was noticed by the warden, and I was presented with a bad attitude with food, after which I was sent to the punishment cell for 2 days. They could punish us even for completely harmless things. Then we were transferred to the general block, where the discipline remained strict. But now a sort of school was added in. But they didn't teach us what ordinary school children are taught. They only taught us some subjects: chemistry, biology, and the basics of writing, reading, and computing. I made great strides in the topics of genetics, and the school administration really did not like it, so I was removed from those lessons. But before that, I received punishment in the form of a sound test. When they come of age, everyone goes through a commission where their fate is decided. The naughty ones are sent to the adult block without the possibility of rehabilitation. Those who have no more than 3 violations in the last 2 years in prison are sent directly to rehabilitation, and the obedient ones to freedom. I was always considered naughty, and there were reasons for this, as I mentioned earlier. But sometimes there was an opportunity to fix everything. Do you know the main reason why I fell out of favor? It's because I, like all children, was interested in learning more about my mother, and I dared to go to the library for non-scientific purposes, which is a gross violation of rules of our institution. Then I dared to sneak into the archives department and take out my mother's file, which is almost never forgiven. When I stole the documents, I was prepared to find out the truth about the terrible woman who gave birth to me, trying to guess whether she was a murderer or a thief, and it turned out that she actually robbed a bank that is ajar. And she didn't rob it. She just smashed it. The fact is that on that ill-fated day, my mother left a store and decided to put money in the donation jar at the exit. But when she was putting it in there, her car key slipped out and fell inside. She couldn't get it and ended up accidentally breaking the jar. Immediately, the guards approached her, followed by the police, who decided to take her to the station. Mom swore that this was absurd and that everything that happened was pure coincidence. And in the end, she was convicted of rudeness and disrespect in relation to the authorities. That is, to the police. Can you imagine? As you can guess, I was very quickly caught and punished. They let me know I shouldn't count on being released. But at that moment, I was already thinking about something else. I understood that there must be some way out of here. And not only for me, but for all the other children and adults. I understood that every case should be re-examined because at least half of them are like my mother. But how could I do anything if we were completely isolated from the outside world? Soon, I had an idea. The fact is that in our prison, there's a small sewing workshop for the production of medical masks. I was there 3 times a week, which meant it was my chance. I wrote a note in a very small handwriting on a very small piece of paper with the following text: "We are being illegally detained in prison. Save us." And then I sewed it into the side seam of one of the masks, hoping someone would find it. I know the chances were slim, but still, it's better than nothing. All that was left was to wait and hope. In the meantime, the punishments in our prison were getting tougher, and the stay there became simply unbearable. The fact is that for us, the food supply was greatly reduced, and in fact, all the prisoners lived from hand to mouth. Someone even fainted from lack of food. We knew that we were just about to start dying one after the other. We needed to be saved. And one morning, 4 weeks after sending my secret message, something incredible happened. A rescue team showed up at our prison, and the entire leadership of the institution was taken into custody, along with the mayor, and each adult prisoner's case was reviewed right there on the spot. And those who were there for rudeness, petty theft, dissent, and other pranks were immediately released. And as a result, only 30% of the convicts remained in prison. As for the children, we were released without trial because children are not responsible for their parents and must live in different conditions. When I was released, I went outside the prison for the first time. Even though the sun shone differently, it was brighter and warmer, not the same as before. And the people there smiled, and their faces seemed to shine. I had never seen such beautiful and cheerful people before. And the flowers. Oh, it's just a miracle. I've never seen them before, and they're fantastic. Soon, I met with my parents. They were so lovely and nice that I even cried looking at them for most of my life. I had thought of them as evil and immoral criminals. The guard taught us to think that way, but I was lied to. Now we live in our apartment. I am truly happy, and I hope that one day I can forget all the horror and darkness that I had to endure. I just want to forget my prison term and start from scratch. Do you think I can become an ordinary person like you? Write your thoughts in the comments, like to support me, and be sure to subscribe to our channel.
"Where's my sandwich?"
Aiden yelled from the TV room.
"I'm coming, and don't forget the pickles on mine,"
yelled Ethan. I grabbed everything quickly, packed it on the tray, and hustled to the TV room. My brother snatched the tray and began to devour the meals. Not even so much as a thank you, but I guess I was accustomed to it by now. Just then, the phone rang.
"Hello? Good day, Mr. Peterson. How can I help you?"
He listened for a bit before responding.
"Yes, he's here. I'll put it on loudspeaker." "You brat, beat it,"
Ethan hissed as he snatched my arm, shoved me out of the room, and shut the door behind me. I wiped my arm and gently opened the door, kneeling and placing my ear against the entrance. Mr. Peterson informed my brothers that he needed 25 passports and identification cards in 3 days. He was willing to pay them $25,000 for their services. Then, all of a sudden, the door opened, and what followed changed my life forever. Hi, I'm Molly. Before I continue my crazy story, tap that thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to smash that notification bell so you'll know when more stories like mine are posted. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of my backstory. Mom married Dad, who had twin boys. Mom was an only child, and Dad had an older sister, Stephanie. My brothers and I were never really close, as they are 9 years older than me. Dad came from a wealthy family, and he also had his own medical practice. Huh? My parents were flying out of state to attend a medical conference a few days after my 16th birthday? Regrettably, they were killed in a vehicle accident. My brother now has custody of me. That was roughly a year and a half ago. My life has been a sequence of misfortunes since then. You look exhausted. When I met up with Ember for our daily walk to school that morning, she noted. Aiden and Ethan had a few friends around last night, so I smothered my curiosity. I stayed awake till 4 a.m. The house is being put back together. You're not there to convince you that you should defend yourself. It's a 2-on-1 situation. The chances aren't in my favor. Just as we were about to walk through the school gates, when the bell rang, we dashed to our last lesson of the day. Because Ember had swimming practice, I walked home from school alone. When you first walk into the house, Aiden, Ethan, and I heard the phone ring. I yelled as I walked in. The ringing came to a halt. Well, that's strange, I muttered when I didn't receive a reply. My brothers were usually at home around this time. The phone rang again. I wasn't allowed to answer the phone. But what if something had happened to my brothers? Should I answer it or let it ring? We didn't have answering machines, so maybe I should. This ping pong match lasted for a few seconds, and I finally put the receiver to my ear. Hello?
"Hi, Molly. Mr. Holdings."
The family lawyer greeted me. How have you been?
"I'm okay.
Would you like to leave a message for Ethan or Aiden?
Actually, I'm glad I got you. I've been wanting to speak with you about your parents' will.
A few days after my parents died, Aiden and Ethan spoke to the lawyer. They never gave me any information from the meeting. Okay, what is it?
Have you been receiving this stipend? Your parents left for you? Monthly stipend.
I raised an eyebrow. Mr. Holdings went on to explain that my parents left me a monthly stipend of $2,500 per month, and a stipend for my brothers or guardian, which was about $5,000 to ensure I was well taken care of since my parents died. I haven't received anything that I would assume.
They didn't tell you that your parents left you a house and $2 million?
No, they didn't.
I was shocked.
How could my brothers keep this type of information from me?
Molly, are you sure you're okay? Your Aunt Stephanie would be happy to take you if your brothers aren't taking care of you.
I hesitated for a moment. Aiden and Ethan told me stories about how Stephanie treated them in the past. Through Ella, they came up with a moniker for her. Perhaps they were telling the truth about her. They wouldn't get the stipend if I didn't live with them. I decided to throw caution to the wind and tell Mr. Holdings all that had happened in the last 6 months. Mr. Holdings promised to contact me about my new housing arrangements, but I told him I wanted to give him some more time. I informed him that I was not permitted to use the telephone. Before hanging up, he indicated that he'd attempt to find a method to convey a message to me. I asked him not to inform my brothers about our decision. He assured me that our decision was private. I felt lighter and comforted after speaking to Mr. Holdings. Maybe I can have a brighter future than the one I envisioned. Over the next 3 weeks, I didn't hear anything from Mr. Holdings. I just can't take this anymore, I muttered to myself. One evening, while preparing sandwiches for my brothers by hook or by crook, I have to find a way out of here.
Molly, where's my sandwich?
Aiden yelled from the TV room. I'm coming.
And don't forget the pickles on mine,
yelled Ethan. I grabbed everything, quickly packed it on the tray, and hustled to the TV room. My brothers snatched the tray and began to devour their meals. Not even so much as a thank you, but I guess I was accustomed to it by now. Just then, Aiden's phone rang.
Hello? Good day, Mr. Peterson. How can I help you?
He listened for a bit before responding.
Yes, he's here. I'll put it on loudspeaker.
Beat it, you brat. He even snarled as he grabbed me roughly by the arm, threw me out of the room, and closed the door. I rubbed my arm and opened the door slightly, kneeled, and placed my ear by the opening. Mr. Peterson told my brothers that he wanted 25 passports and ID cards in 3 days. He was willing to pay them $25,000. Suddenly, the door opened and I fell into the room.
What the heck are you doing?
Ethan growled. I was looking for my contact lens after he threw me out of the room. It fell out, you idiot, I snapped. He even raised his hand to slap me, but didn't hold his hand back.
We don't have time for this. Deal with her. When we come back, we have things to take care of.
Ethan shoved me against the wall and pointed his finger in my face.
Clean the kitchen before we come back.
I cleaned the kitchen already, knowing you haven't even looked at me smugly before turning away and heading towards the kitchen. I heard glass shattering and things being thrown against the wall. I walked to the kitchen. By the time I got there, it was totally trashed.
Now.
Ethan adjusted his clothes.
Clean it up.
He shifted his gaze to Aiden.
Let's get started.
I dashed to the basement as soon as my brothers had departed. I had a feeling Dad had spare keys on hand in case I needed to get into the office. Because it was the only locked door in the home and I had never cleaned that room, I assumed that was where they were performing their unlawful business. I went to the office after finding the tiny box with the keys. I'd be able to get a passport and an ID card if I could just get the door open. I was often told that I looked older than 18, so I was confident that it would work. I cursed under my breath as I tried key after key to open the door, but none of them worked. I was about to give up when I pushed the key in and I heard the lock open. I sighed in relief. I stepped into the office and closed the door behind me. Everything in the office was set up and it looked easy enough to create the items that I needed. I got to work quickly. As soon as I finished creating my passport and ID card, I called the police and told them about my brother's illegal business. I also told them that my brothers had locked me in a room and I needed help to escape. The officer on the other end said that a car was on their way to me. I smiled slightly as I hung up the phone. I ran to my room and I packed a bag quickly and returned to the office and headed for Dad's safe. I needed to get enough money to survive until I could find a way to get to Mr. Holding's office. Luckily for me, my brothers did not change the codes for the safe. As soon as it was open, I began to pile money into my bag. While doing this, I heard a frosty voice behind me and my eyes widened.
"Are you stealing from us, little sister?"
I spun around and there stood Ethan by the door. I quickly zipped up my bag and placed it on my back before standing to face them.
"If I were you, I would put it back."
Ethan stepped into the room and walked menacingly towards me.
"Or would you prefer we speak with the police?"
I'm not stealing from anyone. Mr. Holdings told me about the money Mom and Dad left me and the stipend they're giving you to take care of me. So please, Ethan, call the police. I bet they would just love to know how you're treating me over the past 6 months and not giving me my stipend that my parents left for me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be leaving."
"Now."
Eden's voice came from behind. I pushed past Ethan and tried to exit the office, but Eden wouldn't let me pass.
"Look, we're sorry about the way we treated you. We all suffered tremendous loss, and we didn't handle the situation as we should have. I know it would take some time for us to make it up to you, but please forgive us and allow us to stick together. Isn't that what your mom always used to say?"
The sincerity in Aiden's voice made me reconsider if I was doing the right thing. He was right. They also lost their dad, and the past 6 months have been hard. I sighed heavily.
"So, what do you say? Truce?"
Aiden extended his hand, and a small smile curved my lips. I took up his hand and shook it, and then suddenly Aiden jerked my hand, twisted it behind my back, and pinned me to the wall.
"You trust way too easily, Molly. That's no way to live your life. Whether you like it or not, you're stuck with us for the next 2 years.
The doorbell rang, and everyone froze. When no one responded, the person on the other side identified himself as a police officer.
"Take her to the basement and make sure she stays there."
Ethan was even given instructions. As he carried me, kicking and screaming, to the basement, Ethan put his hand over my mouth. Aiden came to the front door and answered it. Ethan flung open the basement door and dragged me inside before closing it behind us. I looked for anything that could give me an advantage against Ethan, who was taller and stronger than me. A hockey stick caught my eye in the corner. I cast a glance towards Ethan, wondering whether he had figured out what I was planning. He lunged at me, but I swerved to the side and grabbed the hockey stick. The hockey stick brushed my fingers, but I couldn't hold on. Ethan snatched my hair and yanked me back. My hands groped blindly around the basement for something to help me get free. I could use my hands to hold on to something cold and hard. It was a wrench. I swung it at Ethan, but he dodged it and threw me to the ground, his knees on either side of my chest. He snatched the wrench from my grasp, hunched over me. His face contorted in anger. He pressed it against my neck. I used my hands to try and push him off, but he was too strong. My air supply was being cut off.
I was on the verge of passing out when the basement door flew open. "Hands up. Yeah, I'll shoot." Ethan dropped the wrench and stood up. I rubbed my neck. "Molly?" I heard Aunt Stephanie's voice. The officer handcuffed Ethan, and Aunt Stephanie helped me get to my feet and hugged me. "Are you okay?" I nodded with tears in my eyes. "Let's get you out of here." We walked to the living room where another officer, Mr. Holdings, and Aiden were standing. "Molly, all the arrangements have been made, and you'll be staying with your aunt from now on." "You think your Aunt Stephanie is better than we are? Come on, let's get you to the station." The officer pulled Ethan towards the door. Ethan looked over his shoulder. "You're making a big mistake." "Are you ready to go, sweetie?" Aunt Stephanie looked at me. I nodded and we left. Aunt Stephanie was a breath of fresh air for the following few months. We stayed up late watching movies while shopping, and I even purchased a cell phone and a laptop. It was a wonderful time. The only problem was that I had to change schools, so I wasn't able to see my friends as much as I wanted. We did, however, talk every night before going to bed. I was preparing to walk into the kitchen one night. Stephanie was on the phone with someone, and I overheard her. Since she inquired if she could earn a higher stipend, I assumed it was Mr. Holding. I went into my room and packed a bag, since taking care of a teenage girl was expensive. And I was saddened by what I had just heard. I can't believe I fell for it, because all she cares about is money. It was never about me in the first place. I was still in possession of the funds, the passport and a fake ID from all those months ago. I waited until my aunt was sleeping that night before I ran away. I was able to get a decent apartment and a part-time job after school, which kept me afloat until my 18th birthday. When my birthday finally came around, I contacted Mr. Holdings and was given access to my inheritance. I refused to let anyone get close to me, because I don't know if they like me or the money that I have. Maybe this will change in the future, but until then, it's important for me to keep my peace.